She forges evidence against her own father. She wanted to take all his money, but what happens next changes everything. Haley spent her days feeling frustrated with the simple life she had with her father, Levi. "Dad, why can't we have a better life?" she asked one evening as he placed their modest dinner on the table. "Sweetheart, we have what we need. We've got food and a roof. What more matters?" he answered with his usual calmness. "What matters is that you have a lot of money, but you live like a miser. Why can't you be like everyone else and want more out of life?" she asked. "Sweetheart, why want more than this? We've never lacked anything. When your mother was alive, we always thought having just enough was good enough, a simple life, without stress or trying to impress anyone," he explained. This answer annoyed Haley. To her, just enough wasn't enough. She wanted more. She wanted luxury. She wanted to fit in and be noticed by her friends, who always looked down on her for not having the same things they did. Slowly, she began to distance herself from her father. She avoided conversations, locked herself in her room, and when Levi tried to talk to her, she would respond with cold, short answers. "How was school today?" Levi would ask, trying to start a conversation. "Fine," Haley answered without even looking up from her phone. The silence between them grew, and the affection they once shared seemed to fade. Levi didn't understand why his daughter had grown so distant, while Haley felt more ashamed every day. She started spending more time with her friends, who had everything she dreamed of: parties, cars, and holidays. And each time she came home and saw her father sitting in the same old chair, wearing the same worn clothes, her anger grew. One evening, after another day filled with silence, Levi made one last attempt to reach out. "Haley, you've been acting differently. What's going on?" Haley dropped her fork on the table, fed up. "What's going on is that I'm tired, Dad. Tired of this boring life. You don't want anything more than this, and I can't live like this forever." Levi sat quietly, stunned by her outburst. He never imagined his daughter felt this way. With a heavy heart, he lowered his gaze and went back to eating slowly. Haley got up from the table without finishing her meal and stormed off to her room, slamming the door behind her. Her heart was heavy, but the thought of staying in that life was unbearable. She no longer saw her father as a kind, loving man, but as someone holding her back, someone standing in the way of the life she wanted. At first, she tried to hide the simplicity of her life, making up stories to pretend her life was full of luxury too. But the truth always came out, and she heard teasing disguised as jokes. "You've never been to the beach in summer?" One friend laughed. "Wow, Haley, do you really still live in that old house?" Another friend asked. These words echoed in her mind. Each time someone laughed at her situation, Haley felt smaller and more frustrated. She wanted so badly to belong to their world, but she felt that her father and their simple life were a burden holding her back. In conversations with her friends, they kept telling her the only way to change her life was to take what was rightfully hers. "If you had more money, your life would be completely different, Haley. Why don't you do something about it?" One friend suggested. "My dad's not giving me anything now. He just hoards everything and keeps living the same old way," Haley vented, choking back tears. "What if you take control? Maybe you could manage everything and use the money properly." The idea seemed ridiculous at first, but part of Haley started to believe it might be her only way out. The shame she felt toward her father began to mix with anger toward their situation, and that's how a dangerous thought started to grow in her mind. Take control away from him. If she could sell the family house and manage the money herself, she could start a new life far from the reality that suffocated her. But she knew Levi would never hand anything over willingly. He had always been strict with their modest belongings and liked to handle things himself. She needed to find a way to push him out of the picture. Then, during a casual conversation, she overheard him mention the community fund he managed. "We've still got that little bit saved up for repairs. It's all safe as usual," he mentioned one evening over coffee. Haley pretended not to care at the time, but that comment sparked an idea. If she made it look like her father was stealing from the fund, he could be removed, maybe even arrested. With Levi out of the way, she could take control of everything. At first, guilt crept in, but it didn't take long for it to be replaced by the desire to escape her life and feel accepted by her friends. "This is the only way out," she whispered to herself. Determined, Haley began to put her plan into action. Every step she took made the plan feel more real and harder to undo. Her conscience weighed on her, but the thought of a new life, free from poverty, pushed her forward. She looked at her father with a confusing mix of guilt and anger. "It's for the best. He'll understand one day," she whispered to herself, hoping it would ease the burden of betrayal. Haley spent sleepless nights with her computer open, papers scattered across her bed. Her heart raced every time she altered the documents she had copied from her father's files. She knew what she was doing was wrong, but a voice in her head insisted, "You need to get out of this life, there's no other way." She carefully changed some numbers on the fund statements, making small adjustments to make the changes seem natural. Then she created a fake bank account in Levi's name, faking deposits that never existed, and transferring small amounts from the community fund, which her father always left open on his computer. She was meticulous, making sure the documents looked like genuine mistakes, but were incriminating enough. Next, she created a new email account to send messages to herself, pretending they were exchanges between Levi and another person. The emails hinted at shady deals and transactions that didn't exist, making it look like he was stealing from the fund. At one point, Haley stopped, her fingers trembling over the keyboard. A part of her wanted to delete everything and forget the whole idea. The weight of what she was doing pressed on her chest, and for a moment, a tear rolled down her cheek. "I'm sorry, Dad," she whispered, wiping her face quickly. But the thought of staying in that life without money or acceptance took over again. She took a deep breath and continued. Every change she made felt like a step closer to freedom, or so she thought. She reviewed everything multiple times, erasing traces and fixing any mistakes. Nothing could go wrong. The documents and emails had to look real, as if her father had truly used the money for himself. After hours of work, she looked at the screen with relief. It was all ready. With everything in place, Haley knew there was no turning back. The plan was set, and the evidence was prepared. All that was left was to take the final step, reporting it. Her heart pounded so hard she could barely think, but her desire to escape outweighed her fear. She picked up her phone and, with trembling hands, dialed the anonymous financial hotline. A calm voice answered on the other end. "Financial hotline. How can I assist you?" Haley took a deep breath, forcing her voice to sound steady. I want to report something anonymously. It's about embezzlement." The operator asked for more details, and Haley began to explain, trying to keep her voice emotionless. "There's a community fund, and a man I know manages it. He's stealing from it." There was a brief silence on the line, and Haley felt tempted to hang up and pretend nothing had happened, but the operator's voice brought her back. "Do you have any proof?" Haley swallowed hard and opened the folder on her computer containing the fake documents and emails. "Yes. I have bank statements and messages. I can send them now." "All right, you can send them to our email. Don't worry, your identity will be protected." Haley bit her lip, closed her eyes briefly, and hit send. The notification sound felt final, like a door closing behind her. "Anything else?" the operator asked after a brief pause. "No, that's all," Haley whispered. She hung up and sat there on her bed, staring into the void. The silence in the room was deafening, and all she could hear were her own thoughts. It's done. There's no going back now. It was a morning like any other when Levi heard loud knocks on the door. He wiped his hands on his shirt, thinking it might be a neighbor needing help. But when he opened the door, he found 2 police officers standing there, looking serious. "Levi Jackson?" one of them asked. "Yeah, that's me." "Has something happened?" Levi replied, confused. "We have a warrant for your arrest on suspicion of embezzlement and fraud." Levi stood frozen for a moment, not understanding. Embezzlement? Fraud? There must be some mistake. "I didn't do any of that." The officers showed no sign of doubt. One of them pulled out handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in court." Levi stepped back, still trying to process what was happening. "Wait, hold on. This has to be a mistake. I can explain," he said, growing more desperate. "The evidence is clear." "You should speak to a lawyer," one of the officers said as he locked the cuffs around Levi's wrists. From inside the house, Haley peeked through the crack of her bedroom door. She heard everything. The sound of the cuffs clicking around her father's wrists made her stomach churn, but her feet stayed glued to the floor. She wanted to run and say it was all a mistake, but shame and fear held her back. She hid, hugging herself tightly, listening as her father was taken away. "Haley? Sweetheart?" Levi called, glancing inside the house as the officers dragged him out. "Call Xavier, he'll know what to do." "I didn't do anything, sweetheart, you know that." But Haley didn't answer. She stayed silent, her face burning as she fought back tears. She heard the officers' footsteps as they led her father to the police car, and the sound of the door shutting behind them. Then the car engine started, and the vehicle drove off down the street. Sitting in the car, Levi stared out of the window, trying to make sense of how his life had come to this. His whole body felt heavy. But the worst pain was in his chest. Why is this happening, he wondered, trapped between fear and sadness. Meanwhile, Haley remained frozen in her room, her mind spinning. She thought she'd feel relieved seeing the plan work, but all she felt was a heavy weight pressing on her. She closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. I had no choice." In the cold, cramped cell, Levi sat in the corner with his head down, trying to understand how his life had turned into a nightmare. Everything felt surreal. He kept whispering to himself, "This is a mistake. It must be a mistake." The first thing he did when he arrived at the prison was ask to speak to Haley. The police let him make a phone call. Heart pounding, Levi held the phone to his ear and waited. The phone rang on the other end, but no one answered. He tried again and again until, finally, Haley picked up. "Haley, thank God, sweetheart, you need to listen to me. This is a mistake. I didn't do anything. You know that, don't you?" His voice was rushed and desperate. On the other end of the line, Haley gripped the phone with trembling hands, but her voice came out cold, almost distant. "Dad, I don't even know what's really going on. They said something about the community fund, but I don't know how to help you." Levi's chest tightened. Her voice sounded like that of a stranger. "Haley, please, I need you to contact Xavier, the lawyer. He'll prove I'm innocent." "I've never stolen anything, sweetheart, never," he begged, his voice nearly breaking. I'll see what I can do," Haley replied, already feeling the tears welling up. But before Levi could say anything else, she hung up. Levi stayed there, holding the phone, listening to the silence on the other end. His heart sank. Does she believe I did this, he wondered. A deep pain spread through him, and for the first time he realized his own daughter might have turned her back on him. The days in prison were long and quiet. Levi felt like the whole world had collapsed around him. Time crawled by and he stayed out of trouble, just trying to survive the harsh routine and loneliness. Every time he thought about his conversation with Haley, the pain in his chest deepened. It wasn't just the prison that hurt him, it was his daughter's silence that left him feeling lost. While he sat alone in a corner one day, an older inmate named Aiden approached him. "Rough first days, huh?" Aiden said, striking up a conversation. Levi looked up, but only gave a small nod. "I get it, man. I've seen a lot of people come in here completely broken inside. Feels like the world swallowed you whole and nobody out there cares," Aiden continued, sitting beside him. "I shouldn't be here. I didn't do what they're saying," Levi muttered, his voice tired. Aiden studied him for a moment, then spoke calmly. "Everyone says that, but you seem different. I can tell you're telling the truth." Levi took a deep breath, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to fall again. "My own daughter. She doesn't want to hear me. I can't believe she thinks I could do something like this." Aiden placed a hand on Levi's shoulder. "Listen, man. Sometimes the people who should stand by us are the ones who disappoint us the most. But don't give up. If you know you didn't do it, you have to fight. It might not feel like it now, but there's a way out of all this." Aiden's words sparked the first bit of hope Levi had felt in a long time. Even in the middle of all the pain and betrayal, he found a small source of comfort. Violet sat at her desk in the newsroom, surrounded by piles of papers and a computer screen full of open tabs. She had years of experience investigating tough cases, but something about this one stood out. It was the case of Levi Jackson, a man imprisoned for embezzling funds from a community organization. At first it seemed like just another fraud case, but as she read through the documents and analyzed the testimonies, Violet began to sense that something was off. "Strange," she murmured to herself, scanning one of the bank statements. The numbers matched, but there were small details that didn't add up. Transfers made on odd dates and documents that looked hastily edited. On top of that, all the transactions that implicated Levi came from a single source. To Violet, it felt like a setup. She knew that a mistake at the start of an investigation could ruin someone's life, and her gut told her that's exactly what was happening to Levi. Without wasting time, she shut down her computer, grabbed her bag, and left the newsroom. She had to hear Levi's story for herself. At the prison, she went through the security checks and was taken to the visiting room. Levi sat on the other side of the glass, his eyes heavy with exhaustion and hopelessness, until Violet introduced herself. "My name is Violet. I'm an investigative journalist. I believe your case might be a miscarriage of justice." Levi stayed silent for a moment, unsure if he could trust her. "I keep saying I didn't do any of this, but no one seems to care," he said quietly, bitterness in his voice. "I care, and more than that, I want to prove you're innocent if you really are. But I need your help. Tell me everything." "How did you end up here?" Violet asked, her gaze steady. Levi took a deep breath and told her his story. He spoke about the community fund, how carefully he managed it, and how the accusations had blindsided him. He also told her about Haley and how much it hurt that she had distanced herself when he needed her the most. Violet listened carefully, jotting down every detail. When he finished, she said, "I'll start with these bank statements and emails. Something doesn't add up. If you're telling the truth, I'll find it." Levi let out a small sigh, as if her presence gave him a glimmer of hope he didn't know he still had. "Thank you. I don't know if this will work, but just knowing someone believes me, it means something." Violet stood up, determined to dig deeper into the case. "I'll see this through to the end. I promise." Violet spent the next few days going through every detail of the documents and bank statements. With every line she read, things felt stranger. The transfers that incriminated Levi not only had unusual amounts compared to the association's usual transactions, but some of them were recorded during odd periods, times when Levi wasn't even involved with the finances anymore. "This doesn't make sense," Violet murmured, showing her notes to Xavier, Levi's lawyer. They were sitting in a small meeting room with papers scattered everywhere. Xavier ran his finger over the statements, frowning. "Look here," he pointed. "This transfer was made during the month Levi was on vacation. He didn't even have access to the account at that time. How could he have done it?" Violet nodded slightly, flipping through more documents. "And it's not just that one. There are other suspicious transactions. Whoever did this was in a rush. If they really wanted to frame Levi, they would have made sure the dates matched up." Xavier leaned back in his chair and sighed, thinking aloud. "This is the loophole we needed. If we can prove Levi couldn't have made these transactions, we'll have a solid argument to overturn his conviction. But there's still one thing missing. Who forged these records?" Violet folded her arms, lost in thought. Someone close to Levi must have been involved, someone who knew the details of the association and wanted to hurt him. And one name kept coming to her mind: Haley. "We need to talk to someone connected to Haley, someone who might know more than they've admitted so far." That's when Violet got access to Miguel, one of Haley's closest friends. She'd heard that he hung around with her, living it up at parties and on trips, always funded by money that didn't seem to come from him. Violet and Xavier decided to track him down. The next afternoon they found Miguel in a bar, looking as carefree as someone with no worries in life. As soon as he saw them approaching, he tried to get up and leave, but Violet was faster. "Sit down, Miguel. We just want to talk." He gave them a suspicious look, but eventually sat back down. Xavier wasted no time. "We know Levi didn't steal the association's money. The evidence is fake, and you're going to tell us who's behind it." Miguel laughed nervously, but his discomfort was clear. "I don't know anything. You've got the wrong guy." Violet placed a bank statement on the table and spoke firmly. "Look, Miguel, this mistake could send you to prison along with Levi. If you cooperate now, you might have a chance to walk away, but if you lie, the blame will fall squarely on you." Miguel started bouncing his legs anxiously. For a moment it looked like he was considering making a run for it, but the determined expressions on Violet and Xavier's faces made him crumble. He slumped his shoulders and lowered his head. Okay, I'll tell you, but you have to promise to go easy on me." "I only did it for the money, all right?" he whispered. "Start talking," Xavier pressed. Miguel took a deep breath and confessed. "It was Haley. She asked me to mess with the documents, paid me to help forge some emails and adjust the bank records, said she needed her dad's money to live better, travel and have fun. And I just wanted cash for parties and trips with my friends. I didn't really think it through." Violet exchanged a quick glance with Xavier. This was exactly what they suspected, but hearing it from Miguel made everything feel heavier. "Why did you go along with it?" Violet asked, struggling to believe what she was hearing. "She promised no one would find out, said her dad wouldn't even notice what was going on, and that if everything worked out, we'd have money to enjoy for a long time." Violet shook her head, a mix of sadness and anger filling her. "You realize an innocent man is sitting in prison because of this, right? And now Haley is going to pay for what she's done too." Miguel hung his head, unable to meet their eyes. "I know. I really screwed up." Xavier gathered the notes and put them in his folder. "This statement is going to be crucial. It's only a matter of time before everything gets cleared up." Violet found Haley outside a downtown cafe. The young woman was distracted, scrolling through her phone, when she heard the journalist's firm voice. "We need to talk, Haley." Haley froze for a moment, then tried to act casual. "Talk about what? I don't even know you." "You know exactly what this is about. It's about your father and the stolen money from the association," Violet said, locking eyes with her. Haley took a deep breath, pretending to be surprised. "My dad? I've got nothing to do with that. He made his own choices. Violet stepped closer, cutting off any escape. We know everything, Haley, Miguel confessed. He told us about the fake documents, the emails, all of it. Haley's face turned pale, and for a moment she seemed lost for words. After a few seconds, she tried to recover. Miguel's lying. He's just trying to pin it all on me to save himself. Violet took another step forward, unwavering. Miguel might not be trustworthy, but the documents don't lie. The dates, the transfers, and we've figured it all out. It's up to you now, Haley. Are you going to keep lying, or will you admit the truth? Haley lowered her head, as if the weight of the world had fallen on her shoulders. After a few moments of silence, she gave in. All right, it was me. Her voice was soft and tears welled up in her eyes. I did it. I asked Miguel to help. Violet kept her gaze steady, waiting for an explanation. Haley took a deep breath and let it all out, as if she couldn't bear the burden any longer. I couldn't take it anymore. My dad, he saved everything, like we were supposed to live this boring life forever. No trips, no new things. He never spent anything. I wanted a different life. I needed a chance to be something else. Violet listened quietly, and Haley continued, her voice shaky. I didn't do it because I hated him. I wanted more. I wanted to be like everyone else, not feel ashamed. Tears streamed down her face, and she wiped her nose with her sleeve, trying to pull herself together. I thought that if he was out of the way, I could sell the house, use the money, and finally live the life I wanted. I never thought it would go this wrong. Violet crossed her arms and shook her head slowly. You didn't just betray your father. You destroyed his life. And now he's sitting in prison for a crime he didn't commit. Haley began to sob, her words broken by tears. I know I messed everything up. There's no way to fix it, is there? Violet sighed heavily. No, Haley, there isn't. But you can still do the right thing. If not for yourself, then for your father. Haley's arrest happened on a quiet morning. She was still in her pajamas at home when she heard a knock at the door. When she opened it, she found 2 police officers standing there. Her heart raced. She knew this moment would come, but it still hit her like a heavy stone in her chest. Haley Jackson, you are under arrest for fraud and forgery, one of the officers said, while the other showed her the warrant. She didn't resist, just lowered her head as they put the handcuffs on her wrists. Tears began to fall, but she stayed silent. The neighbors peeked through their windows, and all Haley wanted was to disappear. Every step towards the police car felt heavier than the last. Inside the car, reality sank in. Her dream of a better life had turned into a real prison, much worse than the one she had thought she was living in before. She wondered if her father would ever forgive her, though deep down, she knew it might already be too late. The hardest moment came a few days later, the trial. Haley sat on the defendant's bench, her hands trembling. She felt the weight of everyone's stares. Then the door opened, and Levi walked in. Her heart almost stopped. It was the first time she had seen him since his arrest. Levi entered slowly, wearing simple clothes, but his eyes held all the pain he carried. He took a seat in the courtroom and looked directly at Haley. She could barely meet his gaze. The memories of what she had done were overwhelming. The false documents, her words, the hurt he had felt. It all lay between them like an unbridgeable gap. When she finally lifted her eyes, she met his. They were the same as always, kind but now wounded in a way she had never seen before. Haley tried to breathe, but the knot in her throat felt impossible to loosen. Tears came before she could say a word. "Dad," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry, please forgive me, I ruined everything. Levi stayed silent for a long moment. Her words were like needles in his heart, but he didn't look away. Seeing his daughter like this, broken, remorseful, a shadow of the girl he had raised, was almost too much to bear. "You know what you did, Haley. And you know I didn't raise you to be like this," he said, his voice low but steady. Haley sobbed harder, feeling her entire world crumble right there in the courtroom. "I just wanted a different life, Dad, but I made a mistake. I hurt you, and I hurt myself too." Levi closed his eyes for a moment, searching for strength. The love he felt for her was still there, but it was tangled with pain and disappointment. He took a deep breath and finally spoke, his heart heavy. "I forgive you, Haley, but I keep wondering what your mum would think of you now. You've hurt me in ways I didn't know were possible." His words cut deeply, but they also brought Haley a strange sense of relief. She knew she deserved them. She knew she had to face the consequences, but her father's forgiveness was still the one thing she needed most in that moment. Levi stayed seated in the courtroom after Haley was taken away. The forgiveness he had given weighed heavily on his chest, as if a piece of himself had been torn out, leaving him unsure of how to move forward. It wasn't easy to say, "I forgive you," and simply let the pain go. The hurt was still there, quietly reminding him of everything he had lost, his trust in his daughter, the days spent locked away, and the peace he never thought would be shattered like this. As he walked out of the courtroom, Levi was approached by Xavier, his lawyer, who held a folder with the case documents. "Congratulations, Levi. The judge has signed your exoneration. You're free." Levi paused for a moment as if he didn't quite know how to process those words. Free. It was what he had wanted for so long, but now that the nightmare was over, the relief felt incomplete. He took a deep breath and ran his hands over his tired face. "Free, huh?" he muttered almost to himself. "Funny. The prison's gone, but it feels like part of me is still locked up inside." Xavier gave him a reassuring pat on the shoulder. "That's normal, Levi. This was a lot to go through. It'll take time, but you'll heal. The important thing is you're not alone anymore." Levi looked out at the street ahead, feeling the wind on his face for the first time in months. The sensation was good, but also strange. Freedom had a bitter taste because he knew that even outside prison, there were still open wounds, especially between him and Haley. "So what are you going to do now?" Xavier asked curiously. Levi shrugged, gazing at the horizon as if searching for an answer he didn't yet have. "I don't know. I guess I'll just try to take things one day at a time." The walk home was familiar, yet everything felt different. Each step was slow, as if he were rediscovering the world after being locked away for so long. When he finally reached the front of his house, he stood there for a few minutes, staring at the door. What had once been his refuge now felt strange. Walking in alone was harder than he had imagined. At last, Levi opened the door and was greeted by silence. He looked around, trying to reconnect with the small things that used to bring him comfort. The old chair, the tiny dining table, the little garden in the back. On the outside, nothing had changed, but inside, everything felt different. Even with his freedom restored, the weight of betrayal remained. And though he had forgiven Haley, he knew forgiveness didn't erase what had happened. Their lives would never be the same again. "She'll have to pay for what she did," Levi thought, sadness filling his gaze. "But that doesn't mean I'll stop being her father." It was a kind of pain that only time could heal, and Levi was willing to give himself that time. Because deep down he understood that forgiveness wasn't about forgetting, it was about choosing to move forward, one step at a time. The days after Levi's release from prison were tough. Time seemed to move slower, and the memories of what he had gone through wouldn't leave him in peace. But instead of drowning in his pain, he decided to turn the experience into something greater. He didn't want anyone else to go through what he did, being wrongly accused, losing his freedom, and above all, feeling the loneliness of having no one believe in him. That's when the idea for the foundation was born. At first it was just a note in a notebook, a few scattered ideas on how he could help. But the more he thought about it, the more certain he became that this was the right path. One morning he picked up the phone and called Xavier. "Xavier, I've got an idea. I want to start a foundation to help people like me, people who were wrongfully imprisoned, victims of mistakes or setups." "What do you think?" Levi asked, his voice still a little unsure. On the other end, Xavier smiled. "I think it's a great idea, Levi, and I'll help you with it." With the support of his lawyer and Violet, the journalist who uncovered the truth behind his case, Levi began building the project. He decided to call the foundation New Start. The name reflected not only the second chance he wanted to offer to the wrongfully accused, but also the new direction he himself needed to find. Levi threw himself into the project wholeheartedly. He and Xavier worked side by side to secure legal and financial support, while Violet used her contacts to spread the word about the foundation. With every new case that came in, Levi felt he was making a difference. The pain of what he had been through didn't disappear, but every time he helped someone escape an unjust situation, a spark of hope reignited inside him. One day, while drinking coffee in the small office he had set up, Levi received a call from a desperate mother. Her son had been wrongly arrested and was awaiting trial. "Mr. Levy, they won't listen to my son. They say he's guilty, but he didn't do anything. I don't know where else to turn," the woman pleaded, her voice thick with tears. Levi gripped the phone tightly, remembering when he had been in the same situation, begging for help and not being heard. "Don't worry, ma'am. We'll help you. I know what your son is going through. We'll do everything we can to get him out of this." Each call like that was a chance for Levi to rewrite not only the stories of others, but also his own. The foundation became his new reason to live. Slowly, he found strength in the stories of those he helped, giving new meaning to his own pain through the fight for justice. Over time, New Start grew and became a trusted organization. Levi saw people regaining their freedom and hope, and that gave him a reason to keep going even with a wounded heart. He realized that while he couldn't change the past, he could make the present meaningful. More than ever, Levi felt alive. The foundation not only helped others, but it also became a path toward his own healing. And, no matter how hard it was, he knew he was on the right path. After all, the greatest victory wasn't just being free again, it was turning his pain into a chance for others to build a new life. Levi was in the Foundation's office when he received the letter. The simple envelope, with Haley's handwriting on the return address, made him pause for a moment. He stood there holding the paper between his fingers, unsure whether to open it or not. His heart felt heavy, but deep down, a part of him wanted to hear what his daughter had to say. With a long sigh, Levi grabbed a pair of scissors and opened the envelope. The paper inside was slightly wrinkled, and the words written in blue ink trembled as if they had been written through tears. He took a deep breath and began to read. "Dad, I know you probably don't even want to read this, and I understand. I don't have enough words to explain what I did to you. Nothing I say will erase the pain I caused, but I had to try to write this. I needed to tell you that I regret everything, truly everything. At first, I thought I just wanted a better life. I thought money would fix everything. But when I saw you being arrested, I realized nothing was worth losing you. It was only in that moment that I understood how badly I had messed up." Levi closed his eyes for a moment, holding the paper tightly in his hands. It was hard to read. Her words pulled him back to wounds that hadn't yet healed, but he kept going. "Dad, I loved you the whole time, even when I pretended I didn't. The anger I felt wasn't really toward you, it was toward myself. I felt small compared to others, as if our life wasn't good enough. And even though that's no excuse, that's what I thought. And thinking that way made me do everything wrong. I know you forgave me that day in court, but I still carry the guilt, and I wanted to ask again, please forgive me. Truly, I know I'll have to pay for what I did. I just hope that one day you won't think of me as someone who betrayed you, but as someone who is still your daughter, even after everything. I love you, Dad. Even from here, I still love you, and I hope that one day you'll believe in me again." Levi's hand trembled slightly as he folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. He sat in silence, staring at the paper on the table, as if her words were still echoing inside him. For a long time he had felt trapped in that emptiness, unsure if he would ever truly move on. But now, after reading those words, something inside him shifted. It wasn't as if all the pain had disappeared, but he felt the weight ease, even if just a little. The forgiveness he had given in court finally found a place in his heart. Levi took a deep breath and stood up, looking out the office window. Outside, life went on, and the foundation kept growing. There was still much to do, and he knew he couldn't live stuck in the past. Life had to move forward, and so did he. With a calm look, Levi placed the letter in a drawer. It wasn't an answer to everything, but it was a beginning. And he decided he wouldn't let that pain define who he would be from now on. From that moment on, Levi chose to move forward. He would continue dedicating his life to the foundation, helping those who, like him, had been wrongfully accused. And deep in his heart, he held on to a quiet hope. He didn't know when or how, but he hoped that one day he and Haley could rebuild what remained of their relationship. As he left the office, a gentle breeze brushed his face. And for the first time in a long while, Levi smiled, a small but genuine smile. Life was moving on, and he was ready to live it. If you've read this far, get ready to be touched by the story on the screen. An elderly man faces resistance from his own children and makes a decision no one expected. He gives up his beach house to offer a fresh start to a homeless woman. Love, courage, and empathy come together in this journey of transformation. Get your heart ready, because this story is sure to move you deeply.